in a way, it's good because when we bought the house, I was doing TV weather, so
Yeah.
I wasn't doing design. But now I'm like, okay, well, we have a whole kitchen I can do, so that'll be good pictures, and then I can redo this room. So, like in my head, I'm like, we can still make this work.
So
Okay,
I'm just going to kick us off and then we'll just dive in. Okay.
sounds good.
I may use some of that. I mean, that's
That's
some gold
feel
right there.
free.
Hey guys, I'm super excited for you to meet Lynae Wood. Lynae is an interior designer and decorator. Before Lynae moved into restyling homes, she was a full-time meteorologist with an interior design habit on the side. I love that. That habit turned into an undeniable desire to help people take their spaces from partially loved to 100% fabulous. Lynae draws on her background in environmental science to create rooms that are calm and beautifully balanced by incorporating colors and textures found in nature. She uses her decorating magic to help style homes that reflect her clients' unique personalities and interests. Lynae loves to utilize items clients already have in their homes and then elevate the design by finding additional furniture, art, lighting, and decor to perfectly complement the space and take it from just okay to jaw dropping. I've seen her work on Instagram. She is amazing. You're going to love Lynae Wood and just the entrepreneurial spirit she has. So super excited to have her join the Ripple Effect podcast.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. And with me today is Lynae Wood. Lynae is just an awesome person. I have so enjoyed. First, I watched her on television and then we connected on social media and we've kind of communicated back and forth. But this is actually the first time we've ever gotten to meet like in person. Well, sort of, like face to face. But Lynae, welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. What a great podcast you have too.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
I mean, just some inspirational people. So I'm honored that you would consider me and ask me to be on. And yeah, you're right. It's funny because I feel like I know you from just all of our conversations on Instagram and on, emails and you've, really since I stepped away from TV, which in TV I was Lynae Meyer.
Yep.
For this career I'm in now, I've now using my married name, but
Yep.
in TV it was Lynae Meyer. You kind of followed that little journey,
Yeah.
and been very encouraging along the way, which has meant a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I knew you were excited about the next chapter in your career, and obviously, if there was any way that I could help, I was happy to do it. And obviously, you are on the path I think you were destined to be on because you are, you're in interior design and you're a decorator, and you have this phenomenal following on all the social platforms because you have this personality that just lights up. I mean, it worked for you when you were on the weather for KVU and clearly just now you're making that payoff dividends for yourself now.
Well, I'm glad that something of that over decade career in TV could contribute to. And you're sweet to say I have a huge following. I think it's a rather small following, but what I love is that they're dedicated and there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of interaction. And to me, like, of course, I would like to see those really giant numbers, Instagram
Yeah.
followers. But the fact is, when you boil it down, I have what I want, which is people that care about what I'm doing. I'm able to help them because I am smaller, and it just feels more personal.
Well, the beautiful thing about that is it does feel like you're talking just to me, right? And that's what I love about it. You have a way of presenting your ideas and sort of what you're doing, and and of course all that you do with your family. It's just so much fun to follow the adventure. But as an entrepreneur now, I mean, this is I mean, you really are killing it. So, have you always wanted to be in business for yourself, or what sort of inspired you along this career path?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so I think looking back now, I can see the entrepreneurial roots deep. I mean, I loved making money as a
Yep.
kid. I loved making money. I remember it started when I was like at home and I would make these little stores. So I would do arts and crafts and different things. And then I would, put like a price on them, like 25 cents,
Yep.
50 cents. And I would tell my family, like, the store's open, come shop.
Come bring me your money.
Yeah. And I remember there was one craft that I had seen maybe in a book, and it was like you roll up a piece of newspaper and then you cut it down the middle, and then you can kind of pull it out, and it turns into like this really pretty kind of flower.
Yeah.
And I, in my head, thought, this is so beautiful. And so I thought, well, everybody needs one of these, right? So, but I'm going to make them pay for it.
Yep, of
So that
course.
was my mindset early on is I want to provide something really beautiful, but I would like to make money off it too if I'm doing the
Sure.
work. So, so now that when I was doing TV, none of the entrepreneurial side really came out. It didn't need to. And I was very
Right.
focused on really being the best that I could be on air, knowing my weather, knowing my geographical area that I was forecasting for. So there were some, little bits here and there kind of popping up of that. But then when I left TV and really started running my own business, I thought, this is what this is hitting in a way
Yeah.
that I never could have imagined. It was checking all the boxes. And like you said, it feels like, oh, I was meant to do this. I'm doing what something that's been ingrained in me for a long time and now has the opportunity, like that flower, to kind of
Yep.
blossom.
That's awesome. What do you think the best thing about being an entrepreneur is for you?
I think I love just growing the business.
Yep.
I love finding something that's like, oh, this has the ability to grow. And this past week, actually, I've hit several roadblocks where I'm like, okay, this is going and this is going. And then all of a sudden something will happen. I'll be like, oh, that's not, that's not going to work. And
Yep.
it's a little frustrating, but then it's also, it's like, it doesn't beat me down for some reason. It just makes me go, okay, now I have to figure this. I have to find a solution to this problem. I was talking to my mom about one of them last night, and she was like, someone had basically told me, you can't do luxury design and design for everyday people. You have to decide.
Hmm.
And in my head, everything in my being is like, no, that's not true. I know that
Right.
that's what everyone's saying, but in my head, it's going, no, 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 it doesn't. We just haven't figured it out yet. So I was
Yep.
talking to my mom about one of the issues I was having, and she's like, I think you might just have to do one or the other. And I was like, no, I said, it's a piece of a puzzle I haven't figured out. And it's
Yep.
probably a puzzle piece that doesn't exist. It's probably a puzzle piece I'm going to have to make, but
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. And that's just kind of, it's like, to me, it's not a question of can you do it or can't you do it? It's just a matter of finding all the right pieces to plug and play to make it work.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you just defined entrepreneurship at its finest, right? At the end of the day, it's like you determine what your market is and how you're going to make it happen. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? So at the end of the day, I mean, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, trying to figure out, okay, what's next and how do I deliver for every market that I want to deliver for?
Right. Though I
Yeah.
can't say that there aren't moments. I mean, literally this morning where I'm like, is this worth it? It's a brief doubt, but then it's always, yeah. Yeah, it is. You don't have a
I've
good
been,
choice.
oh yeah, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 22. I have those moments like a
Yeah.
couple of times a day. Let's just be honest. So yeah,
But the voice in your head telling you you can do it is so much louder. So
yes,
even in those times you sort of doubt and you're like, "Ugh, this is really hard." It's like, but I don't have another choice. This is what I was meant to do. I'm
yeah.
going to figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. Well, so I'm big into the origin story. So tell us a little bit about how you became who you are today. Where did you come from? I know you went to Baylor, right?
Did.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're a huge Baylor Bear fan.
Years.
Yeah, go.
Mhm.
Well, so tell us just a little bit of your background, if you don't mind.
Right. No, I don't mind at all. So I grew up middle child. I grew up in Waco, Texas. Not too far from here.
Yeah.
Um, and I think part of my story is how I got into TV meteorology, and that kind of goes back to in Waco. We lived in a house, and literally behind our house was a tornado siren that would go off frequently
Wow.
whenever there were storms. And the radar technology wasn't as good in the early '80s when I was a child, and so it would scare me. I would start
Yeah.
trembling and
Oh,
really
wow.
be almost uncontrollable as far as like the fear that a tornado was going to rip through our house. So when I was
Yeah.
about 8, my mom, who homeschooled my brother, sister, and I, she was like, Lynae, she goes, I think, how about next time we go to the library, you check a book out about weather, about storms? And she
Oh,
said,
wow.
maybe if you start reading about it, you won't be as scared. And so I followed her advice. I got those books. And the more I read, the more I fell in love with weather. I also realized that most people would never see a tornado in their whole life.
Hmm.
And so that kind of calmed me as a child. And from an early age, at about 9 or 10 years old, I decided I wanted to be a TV meteorologist. And the reason I wanted to be on TV was because I knew how scared I would get.
Yeah.
And sometimes a calm voice on the other side helped me relax a little bit. And
Yep.
so I wanted to be able to offer that. I kind of carried that all through junior high. And then high school, I kind of changed my tune a little bit. Graduated, I was going to go in a different route. And then
Uh-huh.
somehow ended back up on the TV weather kind of idea again. And so ended up at Baylor. I went to them and I said, I want to be a TV meteorologist. I want to know the weather though. I don't want to just be like, go through the journalism school,
Yeah. Yeah.
not have any weather information or knowledge. That's very important to me that I know what I'm talking about. And so they hooked me up with some professors where it was sort of one-on-one classes, radar meteorology or, meteorology 101. I started interning at the local TV station, and that took off, and I really felt like I was able to be that calm voice. I had a lot of people later in my career email me and said, during that storm, you stayed very calm, and that helped my children stay calm.
Yeah.
And so to me, to hear that, like, that's what I wanted when I was 9 and 10, that's what I accomplished, felt really good.
Talk about the ripple coming full circle, right? I mean, your
Right.
mom created that by saying, "Hey, go learn about it," right? This will
Mhm.
help you to understand and appreciate it for what it is. And then
Yes.
ultimately you had sort of that vision about what you needed to sort of have as a child that you wanted to convey to your audience, and you were excellent at it. I've got to say. I mean, it was when you decided to leave television, I was so bummed because it was like I depended on that every day because you had that way about your approach to just weather. I mean, the weather changes, hour by hour in Texas, right?
Right.
But you had a really calming effect to those that watch. So
Well, I appreciate that. I remember my very first station. I was trying to learn how to be on TV and how to be comfortable. And it was Victoria, Texas, where I happened to have been born. My grandmothers still lived there. So I stayed
oh
with my grandma while I was doing TV there because they were paying $50 a show. And I did 2 shows a week. So I needed a little help on the
wow, yeah,
financial
yeah,
side. But I remember I was so nervous. And then I kept thinking, my grandma's watching on the other side. So I
yep,
just need to talk to grandma. I
yeah,
need to talk to her. That's that kind of when I let that sink in, like, just talk to grandma. How
yep,
are you talking to her? That's how you need to talk to everyone. And so that sort of was what helped me kind of calm down and then sort of find my voice,
yeah.
so to speak, in TV. But the TV news business changed drastically over the 10 years that I was in it. And
In
by
what
the
way? I mean, can you say?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, when I first started, there were a lot of TV stations that were owned by smaller companies,
Yeah.
companies in hometowns. And so there was a very hometown feel. It was very much about what was happening in that city and how the news was affecting that city. And as I got into it, corporations started buying out these little TV stations,
Yep.
and then just sort of kind of taking the flavor out of them.
Yeah.
And so it lost a lot of the personal. Corporations would come in and just slash the budgets. And so that meant doing a lot more work for a lot less pay. In fact, even that's continued even now. There are meteorologists doing the same job that I did 10, 12 years ago that are
hmm
getting paid about $20,000 less than I got paid 10, 12
Oh
years ago.
my
That's
gosh.
what's happened in TV. They work you really hard and they don't treat you very well.
Yeah.
And so, when we were trying to start a family, my husband and I just was so stressed out there. I couldn't get my footing.
Yeah.
Didn't have a great boss who really understood how to use my talents. And I was kind of getting forced into this place that, as a person who knows her mind very well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
You didn't
like.
want to go. Yeah.
I'm like, this is not where I need to be.
Yeah.
And so, I decided at that point to leave TV. Not really because I wanted to, but just because I felt like I was at a dead end with it and I
Yeah.
couldn't get anywhere and I was miserable going in. And the only times I really was happy was when I was telling people the weather.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that was a short part of that shift versus
Yep.
all the other parts hours that came with it and drama, unwanted drama that came with it.
Uh,
So when I decided to take a job trying to sell used medical equipment. Um,
I remember you and I were talking about it. You're like, oh, this is a complete departure from anything I've ever done. Yeah.
Totally, but I enjoyed always being in hospitals and doctors, and so that never bothered me. So I thought, why not give it a shot here? But that wasn't a good fit. And then, like, about a few months into it, I got pregnant. I finally got pregnant with my daughter, which we'd been trying for a little while.
Yeah.
And all I could think about was decorating her nursery. Literally, I was supposed to be making cold calls, and I would be scouring Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist looking for like furniture that I could put in. We, at this point, because I had left the TV news business, we had lost an income. And so I
Yeah.
just didn't have much money. So I
Yeah.
really, but all along I had been refinishing furniture on the side for fun.
Yeah.
Well, I knew I could do it. And I was able to put together a really beautiful nursery, which then led to my sister asking me to do her son's nursery. We took pictures of that and posted that,
Wow.
which led to another friend reaching out and saying, my daughter's moving to an apartment. She's going through a bad divorce and she needs somewhere she can just be. And so we went in and we did that on a very tight budget. But then at that point, that sweet girl was started dating a doctor who had a really fancy house in Austin, which led to a really great opportunity to see what I could do. And I think for his house, that's what I was trying to figure out. Am I good enough to be in this space? Am
Sure.
I good enough to be like a designer that people pay to do beautiful work? And I think the answer ended up coming out with yes on that one. So
Yeah.
that was about 2019. So is that right? Yeah, about beginning of 2020, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, it's time to make it a real business.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been a huge growing pains, but good pains,
Yeah.
pains that
Absolutely.
stretch you and move you forward.
Well, did the pandemic, the timing of that, right, happening in March of 2020, did that make a big impact? I know, you've talked about it on, in some of your Instagram stories that, you had to shift strategy a little bit because you were
Mhm,
doing the virtual consultations, which
mhm.
ended up being a really good vertical for your business, or
Right,
so it
right,
seems, right? And
right.
you adapted, but, if it impacted it negatively, you certainly didn't let on publicly. But, did you see, was there any pause there? Did it give you any concern, or you're like, full steam ahead, doesn't matter?
I think in those two, I had just finished, I think, two projects right as COVID was hitting. And then I think we had that, it was like that really big pause from what
Yep.
was it, like March to April.
Yep.
By May, things were, we were starting to see a little bit of light open up.
Yeah.
We took precautions. I usually would ask clients, how do you prefer to do this? Um, I I was watching the science from what I was seeing of the pandemic, and
Sure.
I didn't have a huge fear factor of it. I wasn't afraid. We're overall very healthy. And so my thought was, if the opportunities present themselves and if the clients are comfortable, we're still going to take all the precautions.
Yeah.
We're going to wear masks. We're going to make sure, we're doing everything we can to be safe. We're going to keep that social distancing. But for me, it's very important to see the space if possible, because
Yeah.
seeing it virtually versus being in the space and hearing from the clients what's working and what's not working is really important. So I had clients who were willing to still move forward. We, would limit as much time as we could to in-person meetings, but I think they were necessary. And so we were able to keep moving. And during that time too, because it was by nature a little bit slower, there were some items I was able to work on my website. I was able to do some things behind the scenes that probably needed more attention. So in a way, that was a little bit of a blessing in disguise. I was able to keep working on designs and growing that, but I was able to do the things that take a little more time and need more downtime to sort of focus on.
Yeah, that's great. What would you say, one or two lessons that you learned during the pandemic that you've applied to your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh my gosh, so much. How about the fact that homes are sacred places? And if you're going to get stuck in your home,
You better love it, right?
never again are we dealing
Yeah.
with it. But don't we want it to be a place that we look at and we love? Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I realized, how important it is. I mean, for that, I think people they were busy. They were doing the out things, and they were home would be like home base. You touch it, and then you head back out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what COVID did, man, it's like you're here. And
Oh, yeah.
in the design world, it was just sort of that whirlwind of people going, we've been looking at this issue for a while. It's okay. Can we tackle it? We're here. They had the money because people weren't spending as much. So
Yeah.
there was a little bit more financial benefit. There's more in the bank accounts to do some of the work that maybe had been put off. And that too sort of came this perfect storm with getting furniture and furnishings, because that was, and supply lines have been greatly affected
Yeah.
by everything that happened, from labor shortages to natural um, raw material shortages. I mean, so many things have been impacted, and right now we're still working with some really scarce availability for items. We don't know when they'll come in. There was an item that I ordered for a client back at the beginning of last year. We found out at Labor Day that they have decided not to make it at all. So
Oh,
we waited almost a full year before they told us they weren't going to make it. Another item was we ordered last August. It was supposed to arrive in December, then it got moved back to end of February. Now it's back to June. Apparently, it still hasn't even made it on the boat.
wow.
So, that's changed the way, I look at things too. And a lot of times I have to go in with new clients and say, we are going to have to put on our big patient pants, because I don't know when this is going to happen, but
Yeah.
know that I'm in it with you from start to finish.
Yeah.
I'm in this with you, and I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'm going to continue to update you as I have updates. I'm going to continue to check on these items. So, yeah, so there's projects that I started back last year that still have one or two pieces missing, and we're at 18 months, and that's pretty unheard of
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it forces you to pivot and adapt, right? And I've even seen you do that on some of your videos where it's like, hey, look, we kind of thought we were going to go out and get this big, great piece, but you don't have access to it. So you're going and you're sourcing it from other,
Mhm,
places, right? You're going
mhm.
to some of the, different places that are resale shops, or like you go to
Right.
Round Top a lot. I saw you
Yes.
were talking about this,
Yesterday.
this past weekend. For my audience, that's kind of like a mecca for all sort. What, how would you call it? It's kind of like a
Oh, man.
crafty kind of
It's
fair.
not, I mean, it's not even that. It's kind of one in its own. It's called an antique show, but it's really vendors coming from all over the world,
Yep.
um, putting items in, from, light fixtures to furniture to, like, trash haulers that pick out some of the good stuff and then just lay it out, and you kind of shuffle through it to find your treasures. I mean, there's everything under the sun, and there's no way you can see it all, even in a weekend. But it sure is fun. And I have my special places I go to. One of my favorites is a guy who sources a lot from Europe, and he has just great taste and amazingly beautiful. And I drove up to his spot yesterday. I'm like, oh, he's not here. Apparently, he's having visa issues, said the people
Oh,
across from him. But
uh,
yeah, so. But there are the ones that I go to. It can be overwhelming if you've never been, but once you kind of go and get your feet wet, and it's just a little bit of heaven, I think, for anyone who loves that kind of stuff.
but you find things that really go with the aesthetic you're going for your client, right? And then you've
Right.
made some of these pieces over because, hey, we just can't get it or whatever. But you end
Right.
up finding something you ended up liking a whole lot better because there's this whole genuineness that comes through in your craftsmanship that you put into these pieces.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And right, and I think we go at it sort of like we go at business, right?
Sure.
This is what we're going for, but then something happens, and you're right, you have to go, okay, well, that's not working. So what about this? And sometimes, and I don't know why this happens, but sometimes it ends up being just an even better fit, or more perfect, or it's crazy. Like, you look at it and you're like, that should have been a mistake, but it's actually couldn't have planned it better.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when I kind of know, like, for me, faith is important. I'm like, okay, so you got this. You're
Yeah.
with me in this. um, and I feel like God's kind of just like, here you go. I'm gonna give you a couple
Yeah.
little blessings when things
Little
go
nudge
wrong.
here. Yep. Yeah.
And that's not to say things haven't gone wrong. And then that's that learning experience too. Like, how do I break this news to my client that this table that we've been waiting on, that was a main piece, isn't coming in? And I'm just huge on communication. I just think, if they've known all along that I've been for them, I'm doing everything I can. And so when I did break the news to them, they were like, "That's okay, we understand." And I just thought, this is how great is this, that I have clients who get it, and aren't mad at me, and saying, "You didn't do what you did." They just said, "Okay, what's the next option?"
Well, the thing I admire about you is I think, and it conveys to your clients is that you're very communicative about what's going on, the process. You're very involved and engaged, and you communicate, right? If there's an issue, you let them know. And at the end of the day, you're along with them for the full ride, right? For the full
Yeah,
process. And I think that makes a huge difference because you have other competitors that are in the space. A few that I know actually locally that they've gotten to the point where, the customers are more of an annoyance. You're in a
Mhm,
partnership with that client,
mhm.
from the beginning to end, which I think is great. And, I think that comes across. And when people feel like they're being treated fairly and squarely, right? And somebody's there that has the same, darn, we can't get that piece, but I'm going to make do and figure out what we can do to make you super delighted and happy.
Yes.
That goes across comes across a huge way, and sort of builds your reputation. And you won't see it now, but you'll see it years from now, where somebody will have heard the legend of how you treated one of their friends or their neighbors, and you'll be like, wow, that business just flows to me because of that.
Right. Well, one thing I keep coming back to is this is a service industry. I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like it because people think, oh, interior designers, you get to pick out pretty stuff, but it really is a service industry. And I have to go into every meeting, any time with the client. It's like, I'm not here to serve me. I'm here to serve them
Yeah.
in whatever way I can. Um, you know, God's given me some talents in this. So how can I use that to bless others? And that's, I was thinking about this a little bit yesterday. I was listening to a podcast and, for designers this guy was saying, my superpower is I can do these really beautiful homes that are expensive and luxury. And I'm thinking like, but is that a superpower? Like, if you give me $50,000, I can do a pretty spectacular room. Give me $4,000 to work with for a living room. And if I can spin gold out of that,
Yeah.
but that's just it. So many designers, they don't, and for very good reasons, it's harder for them to take on clients that don't have the funds that check the boxes for a luxury design. But
Yep.
then that also means that there are a lot of people who don't get the opportunity to just beautify their house a little bit. And to me, that's something that's always said because we never would have had the money to hire a designer
Yeah.
ever. You know,
Yeah.
we were middle class, which is great, but we lower middle class sometimes, and
Yep.
sometimes we did a little better. But we never would have had that. That was a luxury service, and something that keeps kind of coming back to me, like when I was, wanting to be on TV, and I'm like, I want to help people.
Yep.
It's coming through in this too. Is like I want to help the people who feel like they can't have this. Because in my head, the phrase "everyone deserves a beautiful home." Everyone deserves to have a home that they're proud of. And if
Yeah.
that means that I come over and we put a couple inexpensive pieces of art on the wall to fill it up. I show you how to move your furniture so that it fills up your space. So that when I leave, you feel like you're proud of your home or
Yeah.
that it's somewhere you want to be. Then I'm accomplishing something that I think is almost revolutionary in the design world. And I'm not even doing it from a place of like, I want to be known. I'm just doing it from a place of everyone deserves a beautiful home. And
Yeah.
if I have the ability to help them get there, whether it's a $40,000 living room or a $4,000 living room, I'm going to do everything I can to get them to their vision of what their house should look like.
That's awesome. Well, so explain the origin behind the name that you gave your company, because I think that's pretty interesting as well, because it's really what you're doing. We talked right as we were starting the interview, right, about
Yeah.
how in Austin right now the market is so crazy that even if you did want to sell and get another space and move to another home, it's not super possible for a lot of people right now. So people are evaluating where they've been living and saying,
Mhm.
okay, well, if I want to go somewhere else because this house doesn't inspire me, well, maybe rather than going somewhere else, I just need to be inspired about how to make this space better.
Yes. Well, exactly right. And I think, Redefine Designs, when I came up with that name, what I was actually doing was refinishing furniture
Yeah.
for fun. But also I was like, maybe I can make a business. And my husband was like, you can't make money selling furniture, like refinishing furniture. Which he's correct. I could not make enough money doing that. But what that morphed into was me realizing that so I would do a piece of furniture and then I would stage it for pictures and
Yep.
post it to sell. And then people would be like, can you help me do this in my house? And then, I would do a nursery or a living room and be like, I I I can see color. I can understand balance. I understand needing to mix textures for visual interest. And so I think once I realized, oh, I can actually do the full room, I can do more than just furniture. Then, I kept that name, Redefine Designs, but really it was only because I felt like I was redefining what a piece of furniture looked like
Yes.
grandma's old hutch You
Yep.
know, if we put a new coat of paint on it and we sand it down and get to that beautiful wood and make it raw, it fits in with today's society. And so it
Yeah.
gets given a new chance. So I redefined it. But yes, my business model, and I don't think that was on purpose. I mean, it has followed that as well. Like, can we redefine this as well? Can we redefine who can have an interior designer or decorator help them?
Yeah.
Can we make it something that's attainable for just about everyone? And I mean, it's still a luxury service, because the fact is, you can survive without, art on your walls. You can survive without a rug that just looks amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, t-
Well, why
I,
would you, right? I mean,
would you, right?
we have people
Well,
like you willing to help. I mean, come on.
well, and there are statistics that show that houses that are fully put together, that are decorated, and everything's in its place, the people there tend to be more productive, and they tend to be
Yeah.
happier, because you walk in and you kind of can breathe. And so, that's what I would tell people is like, it's worth it to make this investment for your health and happiness. I
Yeah.
personally wasn't following that though, because I had when we bought this house, they had sort of this sage color green on our living room walls, and I never really liked the color, but it wasn't that bad during the day. At night, it
Yeah.
turned sort of more like pukish yet green. Um, but I never really liked it, but I was just going to work with it. And
Yeah.
so for 5 years, I lived with it. And then one day now I'm in design, right? I'm doing other people's homes. I'm telling them, we need to find colors that you love. We need to bring in items that you love. And I'm like on the floor doing Pilates, and I'm looking at my walls, and I'm looking at, and I'm like, I hate it. I hate all of this. And that day I had a really cool black and white rug that came in for a client. It didn't end up working for her space. And I was like, I like that rug better. And I threw away everything that was brown, anything that was like rustic, because that wasn't me anymore. All I was
Yeah.
doing was bringing in items to fit the space, but it didn't fit me. And since then I've started adding items in, and it's just, I walk in and I'm happy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why was I not following my own
Yeah.
advice for so
Yeah.
long?
Well, it's kind of like that doctor that says don't drink and smoke, but then they're, at the
Oh,
bar.
right, they got the
Well,
whiskey and the cigarette.
you're right. Yeah. You look at them, you're like, you need to lose weight, but well, wait a second, you're bigger than me. So
Yeah, but I'm
yeah.
talking about you. I know exactly. So I
Yeah.
took my own advice. I took my own medicine, and I
Well,
tell you what, now I can come at it. And when I say it to people, I'm like, I can tell you this because I'm doing it, and
firsthand. Yeah.
it's changing everything. And
Absolutely.
it's much happier to be in here.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, so I have a couple of Ripple-esque questions I wanted to ask you, but you
Let's
sort of
ripple
hit on
away.
one because you talked about the podcast. What is your superpower? I was going to ask that question, so it's funny that you mentioned it.
My superpower. I like to say that I can take a regular room and turn it into a jaw-dropping space.
I love that.
I feel like I can see pretty quickly when I walk in a space what we can do immediately
Yep.
to give it a wow factor that really feels like it's elevated and upscale. And I also can make a mean paella. I don't know if that's a superpower.
It definitely would be a superpower, I'd say. What do you think would be the best thing you could hear a client or a colleague say about you?
Mm. Well, just recently, I had a client, just kind of reach out. We were, I think, emailing about something that needed to, something came in damage. And she just said, I just want you to know, we love our space. Like, we absolutely love it. And that to me, because it's been difficult the last few months, just waiting for things and damage issues. And so for someone to say, like, we see it, we love it, it is beautiful, is sort of just like, good, I did it right. I did it for you. I did it for your family, and you're enjoying that now. And that's all I want, is for you to love your space. And then if they add, and a couple of them have, we couldn't have done it without you. That's always nice to hear too. Because I think there's so many DIYers out there, and they're like,
Sure.
and some people can,
Yeah.
but a lot of people I think get mixed up, and they're like, oh, I can do it. And then it doesn't quite turn out right. And then they're kind of stuck, and they bought these things that they thought they were going to use. It doesn't work in the space. So, to hear someone say, like, we acknowledge that this was a good investment. Or, for a wife to call and say, hey, we want you to come back and do this next space. My husband actually had me call you when the husband at the beginning of the project was the most resistant, but then they see they see what it can be like when everything is in its place and that everything is styled correctly, and even they can acknowledge this is worth it to pay to have her come back and do more. That's
Yeah.
always, yeah, that's an amazing feeling.
That's awesome. Well, you're kind of proof that you can make a switch. You go from a career that, you love the context of the career, but really being in that career path wasn't really,
Mm.
it was no longer fulfilling for you. And so you found something that really, is working for you, right? And you're very good and very successful at it. What's one good piece of advice that you might give another woman who's thinking about starting her own business?
Right. I would say that be ready for the struggles. I think sometimes we get these wonderful thoughts in our head, like it's going to be beautiful, and I think those are important. You need those pieces of hope, these really big ideas to kind of be like, this is where it could go. But be ready for the fight. Be
Yeah.
ready for the little steps and the falls and the steps. Um, and I think in this world, there's a lot of pressure to do it and do it fast and do it well. And what I'm realizing is slow and steady is so underrated.
Yeah.
And yet, when you take a step back and you say, I'm only in my third year, or I'm only in my
Yeah.
second year, or I'm only in my fifth year, and I'm going to take a moment to reflect on how far I've come. And I'm going to take a deep breath and say, it's okay if this takes longer than the pressure society puts on you to have it done, especially on women. Like, if you're going to do a business, okay, but do it well, be successful, make sure that you're contributing to your family, and all those things are important, but it also can deter you from moving forward. And when those voices become louder than sort of your own voice that says, I'm doing the best I can, and this might not be as fast as I think. um, it also helps to have a supportive husband, which I do, who
Yeah.
says, you can do this, take it slow. Those really tough days, he can talk me through it and um, say, all right, you've learned a lot here. And this is a learning experience. It wasn't a fail, it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
And now look how much more look how stronger you are. You won't make that mistake again. And so it kind of helps sort of pick yourself up to move to that next step. But it takes some perseverance and it
Yeah.
takes some gumption. But I think it's doable and I think it's worthy. And my family gets to come first, and to me, that's the most important. That is the wonderful golden orb, is that my family gets to come first, and I get to decide my hours, my time, how much I spend, how much I don't spend on my business, and that comes down to me, and that's a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you're in complete control. That's the one thing I love about being an entrepreneur is that, when
Yes,
my kids were growing up, I could be at all the things that I wanted to be
yes,
at. I could coach
yes,
my son's soccer teams and I could do all the things that a lot of those parents that were tied to that corporate paycheck couldn't do. Yeah,
right.
did it mean that, there were some sacrifices you had to make financially? Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's so much, more worth it, right? So, and I see that with you and your Instagram stories and your posts. I mean, you're loving it, and you're good at what you do, and that helps, but at the end of the day, you're a committed entrepreneur to being the best you can possibly be, and if anybody's listened to this interview, they can tell that without question. So final question is, what does the next 5 years look like for you?
Yeah. Oh, great question. And I mean, I think I'm kind of in the middle of it. For me, I keep coming back to that, like, design for everyone. And I still want to continue to do higher end design. I love that, and that's a great way for me to be creative and really kind of just like expand a lot of what's inside creatively. To be able
Sure.
to do that in someone's home that fits them is great. But again, for me, it keeps coming back to, like, we need to redefine who interior design is for. And so
Yeah.
that's really my goal. And I don't know if it's a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal. It's a goal that I have to continue to tell myself, you're headed in this direction. I don't know how long that road is. I don't know how
Yeah.
short. I feel like my husband, actually, I was talking to him about something, and he's like, I think you found one of the big pieces to what you're trying to do. And I kind of stepped back to, like, maybe I did. And so I think it's just going to come piece by piece, but hopefully in the next 5 years, we're going to build something. My dream is that Redefined Designs is when you realize you need design help. Like, if your pipe bursts and you have to call, your plumber, you look around and you're like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. You pick up the phone and we're able to, get you connected and send someone out to help you find your style. And hopefully eventually a franchisable business
Yeah.
model where this can be taken to other places and put in, and all of a sudden interior design is like, hey, it's just a phone call away. We can
Yeah.
have a conversation with them, and we don't have to feel weird about it. We don't have to feel like, are they going to make us feel bad if we don't have a ton of money? It can just be a conversation and see if we're a good fit.
Well, I can say, I can see success as, it's a guarantee. I also can see that, at some point television's going to come back calling, but you're going to be able to do it on your own terms with a program or something. Because if anybody follows you on Instagram, and we'll make sure to include all the links to your social pages and your website, but I mean, you belong on camera explaining what you're doing and why you're doing it, because you're just awesome. You do a
Wow.
fantastic job there.
Yeah, that is a huge compliment. I don't know that I see that for myself, but it would be nice, I think, to have that come full circle. It's hard to say like, oh, I did that for 10 years and now that has nothing to do with my life. So I think, if a TV show came calling and it was the right fit and we had something to really offer that was helpful and beneficial, then I'd definitely be interested in it.
Well, there are a lot of influential people that watch, and listen to my podcast. So maybe one of them has connections. I don't know. Let's just, put it out there that you're open and willing to, entertain offers, because, you belong, on a larger format, explaining what you do because you're so good at it. So,
Well, and vice versa. I mean, what
thanks.
you do for entrepreneurs, sometimes you just need that shot in the arm of hope,
Yeah.
that knowledge that like the big dream, the big desire, this big monster of a hill is worth climbing. And, there's other people doing it too. And you're not alone. Because sometimes I think it can feel kind of lonely. So you've done a great job at that. And
Thanks.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, so tell everybody how they best can follow you. We talked about Instagram, and now you're on TikTok, and
I'm
you got a
working
killer
on
website. So give us all the links.
Yeah, so Instagram, you can find me at Redefine Designs. And then for
Designs with an
TikTok,
S, right? Designs.
designs, yes. So
Yep.
Redefine, REDFEINED, redefined, and
Yep.
then designs with an S. And on TikTok, I think it's Redefined Designs Co.
Okay.
But I'm really liking TikTok. It's a little more laid back, and Instagram sometimes you just it feels like a machine you're chugging at, and like this is anyone listening? Is anyone
Yeah.
watching?
Yeah.
But TikTok, can kind of get more things out there. So we're having fun on that. And yeah, my website is great for just kind of if you want to see what opportunities or what design packages we have. But typically I like to just have a phone call because everyone's different. And so I try to find out what you need, and then we make a package for what you need. And I
Yep.
don't try to sell you more than you need.
No, you're really good at what you do, and I am so glad to meet you face to face finally,
I
and have the
know.
opportunity to have this conversation. And whether you realize it or not, you're creating some majorly positive ripples out there in the world. And I'm so grateful for our friendship, and I appreciate you being a part of the Ripple Effect podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is my first podcast ever, and I like
First
when you
ever?
I know, yeah, first ever. I was like,
Sweet.
I'm like, I didn't think I was good enough for a podcast, but I mean, you've been so great for me this whole time, like what you're doing again. So I have to really thank you for this opportunity. It really is. It's really cool. So thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate it. We'll definitely have to have you back, because there's just, there's so much more to talk about. But I know you're super busy because you are in so much demand. So I'm going to let you go. But
Got to go create some designs.
yeah, but something tells me it's not really work for you when you love what you're doing, right?
No, it's really fun. It really is. It's
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining, the Ripple Effect podcast, and I will get all the links out. And
okay.
just keep doing what you're doing. You're amazing, and I appreciate you spending a little time with us.
Thank you. That means a lot. I really do appreciate it.
All right. Well, take care, and as always, ripple on.
Yeah.